Welcome, everyone, to the I Am Vinyl podcast. I'm Pete LaRussa, and once again, I'm joined by Joey from the Rock Strikes 10 podcast. And just a few hours ago, I sent a message to Joey on Facebook Messenger, and I asked him if he wanted to jump on for a little while and discuss an album. And it's an album that I forgot to list on the last Vinylversary edition, so we did not cover it on that episode. So I thought, let's turn one of my mistakes into an episode. And I think it's a good scenario for an episode because it's an album that's been discussed before. That is a lengthy album that has been discussed before as could it have been a single LP, maybe even a double LP. But for the purposes of this episode, I'm going to say, could this album have been a single LP? And if so, I have the tracks that I would have chosen for it to be a single LP. And then Joey and I are going to sequence the thing and play it on this episode. So without any further ado, I'm going to reveal the album as I have not told Joey. I wanted to make it a secret so he has no idea what album I'm about to show here. And here we go. Sandinista.
Ooh, all right.
The Clash.
Get out your glockenspiels and your boom boxes. It's time for Sandinista.
Did you say something?
I say that with love too.
Did you say something about a boombox?
Oh, hey now. Oh, that's something to be jealous of right there.
I wanted to just show this box set. I mean, for mainly the reason that it's one of my favorite box sets. It's just so well put together.
That's a beautiful thing right there.
Yeah. And
you have the singles on there too?
Yeah, there's everything. I think it's pretty much everything they recorded.
Did they mercifully leave out Cut the Crap, or is that in there?
Yeah. Cut the Crap is actually not a part of the box set, but
yeah, upgrade. It's worth more money now.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I wanted to just show something from this box set besides the awesome packaging of it itself. But all of the discs in the box set look like mini records.
Ah, nice.
So I thought that would be just something for Clash enthusiasts to appreciate. And if you haven't decided to buy this box set yet and you still see it available, buy it. That's the only thing I can really say is if you're a Clash fan, definitely buy it because it's worth it. Even if you have the regular CDs. Like, see, I do have. I
have the legacy. Yeah, I have the legacy issues for sure, and I've even got the Super Black Market, and I've got Live from Here to Eternity, which is one of the great live albums ever. Don't sleep on that one, people. That thing, worth it just for complete control.
Oh yeah.
And straight to hell. Sing in tune, you bastards. It's just one of the best moments in any live album. You can actually hear the guy singing off key.
Mm-hmm.
There ain't no asylum. But while not even missing a beat, Joe, right between the verses, sing in tune, you bastard. Right there. Oh, it's just brilliant.
Yeah, From Here to Eternity, it does have the best live version of Complete Control on there. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
All right, Joey. So let's get into the basic facts about the.
Oh yeah, here, real quick before we get into it, I'm just going to be reading the paper while you do that. So, yeah, from the original. Look at that.
That's what I was just going to ask you. I said, do you have an original pressing or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got the 3 LPs, no skips, original. Got the paper. The Armageddon times. Good times.
So does the original pressing, does it have the same labels as the reissue here that I have, the 3LP 180 gram?
I've got it on the Jackson's label.
Got the Jackson label, all right. I was wondering about that because I had a feeling that these newer reissues were custom labels, but that's cool. Yeah, this version also comes with the Armageddon Times paper. So Sandinista was released 40 years ago on December 12th, 1980. So if we're talking back in December of 2020, we would be talking 40 years ago. The reissue that I just held up, the 3LP 180 gram edition, was released sometime in 2013. And the peak chart position for the album was number 24 on the Billboard Top 200 Albums chart and number 19 on the UK Albums chart. And
that's respectable considering there's no big hit on it.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And it's a 3-album set. I mean, even though they charge for 2, that's still very impressive, I think.
Was
And
it they charged for 2, or I thought that they fought to charge for 1?
they did fight to charge for 1. I don't know if they got their way on that. I still don't. I even just recently watched the documentary From Here to Eternity, and
Oh, great
it's a great documentary. And once again, not talking anything about Cut the Crap because that's not a real Clash album, but the things that a couple of things I wanted to know about it is it feels like, as much as I love them, it almost feels like the whole thing about sneaking in the second album and third albums, like it almost seems like a bit because like they're printed up clearly, especially for Sandinista. We'll stick with this. Is it's clearly printed that it's a 3-album set on the back. So like who's gonna miss that if you work for the record label? I mean, so I don't know. But I don't know if they got their way on the suggested retail price for Sandinista. I mean, at the very least, I hope they were able to, charge for a double. Um, Especially if it's going to count as 2 sales, because that's what double albums do. I don't know. But the other thing is, it's exactly a year after London Calling. I believe London Calling came out December '79.
Yeah, it's like literally
And
almost a year.
to do 5 records of material, original material for the most part, with like 2-3 cover songs in the course of a year, that they were just absolutely at their peak. I mean, I know the Combat Rock is the bigger hit and the first album is more heralded overall, but man, this is their peak, 79, 80. And I like Joe Strummer said they pretty much wrote it, recorded it, and mixed it down in 3 weeks. It took less than a month in New York City to do Sandinista, and he's like, I wouldn't even change it if I could, because it's just that moment in time, and it's a beautiful album for that reason. Obviously, it's not much that they left on the cutting room floor if they did at all. It just sounds like a stream of consciousness. It almost sounds like flipping around a radio station. Probably, I had to imagine you were alive during that time in this city that they were recording in.
Mm-hmm.
If you had your radio under the bed sheet at night and you were flipping down the dial, it almost sounds like this is what you would hear just going up and down the dial. It's that varied. It's more varied than London Calling, probably to its commercial fault, but that's what it sounds like to me. There's even a bit where I think they recorded off of a radio station from that area. It's like it's like one of those public like fundraising stations where like everybody gets their own hour or something, and there's this guy that's just kind of yakking on, and he's supposed to be probably playing some reggae music, judging by his accent.
Yeah.
Guy calls up, as we get some music playing, please. And that almost could have been, I feel like that's one of them calling up, like they got on the air. And
Maybe.
because who didn't tape themselves when they knew they were going to be on the radio? I did. I know you did.
I like his reaction to it. He's like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what the album is to me. It's almost like a concept album of like late night radio and, like in a hip urban town, so.
Yeah, I mean, from what I gather, just from documentaries, and I've read a few books. Like I couldn't recommend this book enough. A Ride of Our Own, written by one of their major roadies, Johnny Green, and it seems like it's like what you said. It's like stream of consciousness, and they were in the studio, and for the most part, I think it was recorded in Jamaica, and they did a bunch of work in New York. Actually,
okay.
Yeah, they did some work in New York at the Power Station and Electric Lady, but Jamaica they recorded in Wessex, Manchester. So yeah,
I guess they simplified the story for the documentary, I guess, or something like that, because it's you only got so much time, I guess. But that's cool to know. I need to read that book.
Well, yeah, and it's like I said, from that book, from what I remember, I haven't read it in a long time, but it's like stuck in my brain that time while they were recording this album, it was it wasn't easy. I mean, they had to be careful, first of all, dealing with Jamaica back then, the danger elements, and it's assumed that you're Americans and you're quote unquote rock stars, and that must mean you have money. So they had to be really guarded during the recording sessions. But it's like they locked themselves in the studio, and it's just anything they were coming up with, let's put it on tape.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much like nothing was left on the cutting room floor, and they just wanted to release all of it. And I think that's pretty much exactly what they did. And I think, like I said, I think they might have tried to fight for a single LP price, but it's probably more of what you said. The compromise was, okay, we'll sell it for a double album, but yes, we'll release it as a triple album.
Yeah.
So just to finish off on some facts and stats about the album, and we were discussing the whole thing about selling it as either a single album or selling it as a double album. The album sold over 500,000 copies in the U.S., so it is certified gold. We could assume it probably sold a bit more ever since its original certification. Sure. And in the UK, it's also gold with over 100,000 copies sold. And as you said, there weren't very many commercial singles released from the album. However, there were 3 singles. First one was The Call Up, released November 28th, 1980, followed by Hitsville UK, released January 16th, 1981.
Okay.
And followed by probably the most known song on the record, The Magnificent Seven, released April 10th, 1981. And as far as how well the singles did, it's mostly UK. The Call Up peaked at number 40 on the UK charts. Police on My Back peaked at number 21 on the US mainstream rock tracks, which I find that to be pretty interesting.
That's cool. I was going to say, it's a shame that Police on My Back wasn't a single.
Yeah.
But that's obviously just due to stations adding it, and someone heard it and was like, that's got to be a single. Like, the station's probably trying to get, beat the label to the punch almost and breaking it or something. So, but that's clearly a single. It's clearly an anthem. So yeah, good on whoever added that to their stations, because that's a bona fide hit.
I love that song.
That's like right up there with Complete Control or Tommy Gun or any of those. Like, just, you can't not move when you hear that song.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
So then Hitsville UK peaked at number 56 on the UK charts. That kind of surprises me. I thought it would have done a little better over there. And it doesn't even sound like a Clash song. It could be like a Mick solo song or something like that, or that's what it sounds like to me, at least. But you got the female singer on there, so it barely sounds like the Clash. Right.
I remember actually hearing it, and there was kind of a neat little European big indie film called Millions about 15 years ago, and they actually used that in the film. So I remember going, "Oh, that's really cool. I know that song." So
that's rare. I wouldn't have even known that the song was even used in anything.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a cool little sequence with these kids that come into a lot of money. So it's like the sequence of them throwing money around and stuff like that. It just works really well because it sounds like a little kid's song almost. So
it's true. Yeah, it actually fared a little bit better in the U.S. It peaked at number 53 on the U.S. mainstream rock tracks. That surprises me even more, actually. Rock tracks?
Yeah. Who knows? I've never heard that played to this day on any station. If I'm ever going to come across it, it would probably show up in First Wave on Sirius, if I had to guess, or one of the punk channels, Marky Ramone channel, something like that. But even then, they might even be resistant. There's still a lot of that weird punk rock snobbery surrounding London Calling and Sandinista, for sure. I know punk rock people that hate Sandinista, so that's just how it is.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
It is. And lastly, the Magnificent Seven peaked at number 34 on the UK charts.
Well, Radio Clash was put out in between all this, wasn't it? Like, is it Radio Clash like 81, 82? I feel like it's 81.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah, so a standalone single, and they obviously came up with it after Sandinista. But Magnificent Seven is a great bridge gap between that and This Is Radio Clash. They both have like tons of hip hop influence and just street urban influence. So
yeah, it looks
they should have double A-sided it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that would have been a great double A-side single.
Yeah.
So it looks like it peaked at number 34 in 1981 on the UK charts. So probably sometime in April of 81. And then in 82, it peaked at number 21 on the US Billboard Club Play singles. So that's a unique one. We've never talked about the club play singles chart before.
Yeah. Well, like even all the way up until like the mid to late 80s, Billboard still had it as the black charts also. You remember, do you remember seeing that?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's something that nobody talks about anymore, but the fact that that was still called that at that point is so
was a thing,
weird. That, and I know that because like Billboard magazine, I kind of learned how to read. I used to get free billboards at our house because of my dad, and I just remember going, huh. Like even at like 4 or 5 years old, I'm like, that doesn't seem right. But all right, you know, and there was still the disco charts and club, all that stuff. Floor, as David Lee Roth would call it. So
you were a man ahead of his time at a very young age, advanced in terms of your mind.
I learned how to spell mostly through MTV. I told you that, like all the big words, like from the IDs and stuff. So
with me, it was looking at the back of the album covers, so much. The Kiss, everything. That's really what I think helped me a lot. So I think that I don't think that's something that's talked about enough. When you get into music at such a young age, is how much it does help your development in terms of things like that, with your reading and your comprehension, because you're looking at a cover and you're listening to the lyrics, and you can you start to form. That's that word that I'm hearing on the record. So that's a good point. So you want to get into the tracks that I've chosen in this single LP scenario?
Yeah, go right ahead. I'm interested to see how much I lock up with you. I have not made one in advance because this is a surprise, but I'll definitely piggyback on anything I agree with for sure.
Okay. Well, I went in order of how they appear on the record. So, like I said, it would probably be good if we sequence this together. And right now, as I'm looking at it, it would probably make for a good single vinyl LP because the total running time is 49 minutes and 37 seconds. So
yeah, that would work as, a little bit extended for its time, but sure.
Yeah, but this recording is so well done that I think it would have translated on vinyl okay and would still sound good. So starting off, I have the Magnificent 7.
Naturally.
And I got to note the vocalists because I think it does play into the sequencing eventually. So so the first song is the Magnificent 7 with Joe Strummer on vocals. Second song, Hitsville, UK. And as you said, there's a bunch of background vocalists and Mick Jones. Jungle Partner, the vocal by Joe Strummer. One of my favorites on the record, Ivan Meets G.I. Joe, sung by Topper Headon, the drummer.
Nice.
And that is followed by The Leader, which is sung by Joe Strummer. And you got to have a Paul Simonon track, The Crooked Beat, sung by Paul Simonon. Followed by Somebody Got Murdered, sung by Mick Jones. Followed by One More Time, sung by Joe Strummer.
Nice.
Followed by the amazing and incredible Police on My Back, vocal by Mick Jones. Followed by The Call Up, which was one of the singles. And that is the vocal by Joe Strummer. And then Washington Bullets, with the vocal by Joe Strummer, where the word Sandinista is literally sung in the song.
Yeah. He said it.
The Family Guy joke.
Yeah.
And closing, possibly, with another great song, Charlie Don't Surf, sung by Mick Jones.
I wish I could get into like a big fight with you, but I mean, I would say like you obviously don't like side 3 at all. Or at least you can do without it. It sounds like you can do without it at least. And I totally get why One More Dub isn't on there after One More Time, because that could easily just fit on, the Super Black Market Clash later on or something. We would still get to hear it. Yeah. So I totally get that, even though I'm a huge dub guy. I love dub reggae. But yeah, I totally understand why it wouldn't work here on a single par down.
Well, I'm also considering, if you're, let's say, you're one of these fans whose mindset is this needs to be a Clash album, because that was sort of one of those arguments about this album, as far as it being too overbloated. You know, there's so much stuff on there that's, you know, quote unquote, not, it doesn't sound like the Clash, or it's not punk. So
Yeah.
I guess I was factoring that in mind, and also keeping in mind of a best of, like, if somebody was to ask me to make them a tape back in the day, and they only had like a 60-minute tape, and they said, give me the best tracks from this record. Yeah, sure, I could have added 2 more songs, right, to make
Sure. Yeah.
60 minutes, but
Yeah.
you know, I'm sort of thinking in that mindset. I like most of the album. There's not very many tracks that I don't like.
Yeah, and if you cut off the most Clash sounding songs, with my finger quotes in the air there, it loses a lot of that nighttime thing. It loses a lot of that vibe. But that being said, I still love the songs that you chose. I was very surprised yet excited that Junko Partner was on there, because, you know, that's one of the covers on there. By the way, anybody that is a fan of that song or just a fan of music in general, go look up the Louis Jordan version of that song. Louis Jordan, the Timpani Five. Such a cool sounding song. It sounds like, I mean, it's definitely like Cotton Club type sounding stuff. It's just really cool. That's my favorite version of the song. Like, I got so into that version that I almost didn't recognize the Clashes after a while. But I'm just glad it's on there. I'm glad it's on your list too. I'm sure the easiest ones to cut were the rehash of career opportunities.
Ooh, yes.
Sound of the Sinners I would take off too, because I feel like Sound of the Sinners was probably their most like dishonest in a way, you know, like it's like almost like a joke. Like I this is just a theory, but like, oh, you have so many styles on London Calling, but you didn't do gospel. And they're like, all right, you know, we could do that. I feel like it was a challenge put forth almost by somebody either in the band or close to them or some critic or something. But yeah, I'm just not into it. I don't have any gospel records in my record collection. That song's probably closest it gets, for all I can tell.
Me too.
Maybe like, you know, a couple of Aretha jams that I have here and there, Ray Charles, you know. I'm just looking at the track listing and I don't see anything that I would just totally miss just offhand.
Yeah,
Like I said, my favorite surprises on there. I love the fact that Washington Bullets is on there. There's something about that song.
great song.
Um, yeah, and I love the call up. That should have been a bigger hit, I think, because I think it's really infectious. Um,
Kind of
you know, and
surprising
it's
when you consider, like, you know, songs like Rapture were pretty
yeah,
big around that
yeah,
time.
exactly. I mean, we're primed and ready for something like that, but at the same time, I mean, you know, it's cosmetic business. You know, like if you see the video and you just hear those
Yeah,
sultry vocals, like Debbie Harry singing that track and rapping on that track, you that's probably the only way it could have happened at that time. As much as purists probably hate the fact that the first real actual chart hit for hip hop was done by a white girl from Brooklyn. Even though like they were very close to that scene as well, there was a big
yeah,
cross thing there with Fab Five Freddy and Blondie being the Bridge Gap characters in there, and it's of course name checked in it. But I just think that like just regular ass snotty guys from the UK weren't going to sell hip hop to the masses. So I guess that's why. But it's really interesting how much hip hop influence there is on certain tracks from that particular era in punk rock. And I just love the fact that, you know, it's obviously I'm getting into a real social science thing here, but with what was going on in England at the time with the race wars and everything, I like the fact that the most punk rock thing they could do was, uh, you know, rebelling against their racist parents by embracing black culture, basically starting ska bands with black members in their bands and embracing reggae and dub reggae and ska music, you know, and it stayed because it was a cool, you know, clash of styles, but it just worked. It's the Reese's peanut butter cup, you know. It's you know, but I don't know where I'm heading with this, but that kind of stuff is all over Sandinista. I mean, Sandinista is the culmination of all of that. That's basically what I'm getting to, is like, if you want to know how far the genre took it and never took it that far ever again, it's in this record for sure.
yeah, I totally 100% agree. And I had to choose Jungle Partner. You know, we're talking about they recorded mostly in Jamaica. You got to have a song with that vibe. You got to get the vibe. Getting the vibe.
Yeah.
Little dice clay there.
Yeah.
After this record, I think they pretty much started to like a slow burnout with this record, and then the touring cycle. And my timeline is a little fuzzy, but I think they did all those shows in New York City at Bond, all those nights
Yeah,
in
there
a
was,
row.
yeah, it was like 2-3 weeks or whatever.
Yeah,
They
and
talked about that a little bit in the doc, and
that was
I
after
would love
this
to know
record.
what the set list for those shows are. They obviously mixed it up. There's
Oh,
no way they
yeah,
didn't.
they
But
had to.
I'd love to know that. I'd love to know how much Sandinista is in those shows. Like, because these are songs that we don't hear live versions of. At least I haven't dug deep enough to hear a lot of live versions from this album. I'm assuming there's some obvious stuff. Obviously, Magnificent 7 was on From Here to Eternity. I would think Police on My Back is a layup,
Yes.
but I can't imagine what else was played live. Call Up was probably played live. I think I've heard that, like sped up a little bit. Man, how do you play some of this stuff live, like without having like a Talking Heads Stop Making Sense production behind it, with like where it just builds up to like it's like Parliament on stage, it's like 40 people. What a film that would have been, the
Oh,
Sandinista film.
yeah.
I would love to have. They should have shot everything for that. They should have let it beat it, or Making It Pump. They should have definitely just filmed it as a project and then culminate it with the shows.
That would have
That
been.
would be one of the best things ever. I mean, that's a moment in music history. I think they just thought they were doing a lark, like, no one's gonna give a shit, and they probably felt buried with like the purists at home for going that far. My mom likes songs on London Calling. It's all over. This isn't my band anymore. So they were just probably just like, screw it, just do this. Like, worst thing we can do is have a hit in America.
Well, yeah. I mean, after London Calling, there was really no turning back. I mean, they did the
Yeah,
first record, which you could do the air quotes is the punk record. Then they did Give Him Enough Rope, which definitely still leaned on the punk side, but obviously it had the Sandy Pearlman production, so it sounded more like a rock record.
yeah,
On the production side, but yeah, definitely elements of punk musically. Then they released, London Calling, which threw any of those original Clash fans for a loop. They probably
hmm
alienated a lot of fans. And, then they released this damn thing. I can only imagine, being an original fan of the Clash back then, or if you were from England, and, even if you were a New Yorker, and you were into them from the first record or the first two records, you were probably like, what the hell are they doing? You know?
yeah. Oh
But
yeah, I can only imagine. Like, that's kind of why I like being. I lament the time I was born in. Like, oh, I didn't get to see all the shows.
I think about those things too.
Yeah, and at the same time, like, I kind of like where I am. Like,
Yeah, me too.
I've made peace with it. I get to like I feel like I get to like this record without peer pressure. I get to like the Bee Gees without falling out with my rock brethren.
Good
I
point.
get to like the Disco Stones records, and I'm sure that was massively taboo, at that point. So I like being able to see it from both sides and being able to appreciate it out of the time it's in, because I know a lot of guys that were like, guys that are older than me that were in like high school in the 70s, and you had to hate the Bee Gees in your clique, but now they're like, I love the Bee Gees. And it's like, yeah, so this is why it's kind of a better time to be in certain aspects. So I just don't like separatism of music, and obviously you can't be a separatist of music and love a album like Sandinista.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much an impossibility, or you'd be a massive hypocrite. So
Yeah. I mean, I went into this album hearing it for the very first time, probably around 1999, 2000.
yeah,
Very late
that
in the game, but
yeah, that's
a friend,
about me. Yeah,
a
yeah,
friend of mine got me into the Clash beyond, the few songs that I knew. And, I was kicking myself in the ass afterwards, like, why didn't I get into this band more earlier? When I was a kid, obviously Rock the Casbah was all over the place. My
yeah.
brother
Should I
had the
stay or
40,
should I go?
yeah,
Yeah,
my brother had the 45, so I listened to it all the time. But
the first time I heard "Should I Stay or Should I Go" was on Polkas on 45 by Weird Al. Not even kidding.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew those songs, and I heard like that the Magnificent Seven probably on the radio. So because when I heard it years later, I was like, oh, I remember that song. That was the Clash. Holy shit! So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, so by that point, I was over that that phase you go through where everything you listen to has to be metal, or everything you listen to has to be hardcore. Everything you listen to has to be this. So I was like, now I like listening to pretty much the stuff I grew up listening to off the radio or from my hearing from my parents or my brother. So when I got into the Clash, I was like, wow, I had no idea that they were this wide in terms of their musical scope. And this album was definitely like an experience to hear the first time. It certainly felt long the very first time I heard it, but the more times you listen to it, the more it doesn't tend to feel that way. It just feels like you're listening to like a double album that's just a little bit longer. So
yeah, I did not get it at all the first time I heard it. I was just like, and probably for most people, but yeah, I bought it right after I got London Calling on CD. Like I remember buying both of those at Best Buy because those are the records that were on the little display, like the loss leaders where they were just selling CDs at cost.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
I got a lot of cool CDs that way. I got the old Sony pressing, the non-remastered versions of those first. But yeah, I remember I listened to it once and I probably barely made it through it, put it away for another few years, and kind of re-listened to it when the remasters came out. By the time those came out, I was ready for that album. My C&J radio partner, Chris, my best friend, I think at one time I was having him do a list of his favorite songs from 1980. We did it on Rock Strikes 10, and he actually told me that Sandinista might be his favorite album of 1980. So yeah, and he's another guy that appreciates most anything as long as it's good. So I like the fact that the album, I think Joe Strummer will be proud of how far it's come, because he pretty much didn't make it into this century.
Yeah.
And I think he would be proud of the fact that it's more appreciated now. And I think kind of like artists kind of almost want to be appreciated long after they're gone anyway, in a sense. And for whatever failure that people might have given him as a sense of that when it came out, I think it's long gone at this point. So
yeah, I think people are far more forgiving nowadays. I would say maybe even some of those old Clash purists. Maybe some of them have gotten older and they've come to appreciate things on the record a lot more than they did back then.
Yeah. But Cut the Crap is still terrible.
Oh, Cut the Crap is awful. I couldn't agree with you anymore. I mean, there is a reason why they won't acknowledge the record in the sound system box set.
People getting paid to listen to it didn't want to listen to it.
Well, you don't want to get into the whole story of what happened with that.
Yeah.
That was like a Bernie Rhodes album. It was fucking horrible. Horrible.
Yeah, but no, Sandinista is awesome. Anybody that's still on the fence about it should definitely give it a shot. I'm not saying you're dumb if you don't like it. Maybe it's not your cup of tea, but there's so much to be had in there. Like I said, they even go gospel at one point. I think the dub reggae influence is the strongest thing to take away from it. That's a really cool genre if you want to give yourself to something different that maybe you haven't gone down. If you like that, then go pick up. Everybody's seen it, but most people don't have it. If you ever see the Trojan label box set, that reggae label Trojan, their box set, that's like almost all dub, and it's just great stuff. So if you want to kind of hear what they were listening to when they recorded this record, then there's some homework for everybody out there. So I wish that was on vinyl readily available. I'd buy the shit out of that. Anyway.
Before we get into the album itself, it's crazy to even think, but I was saying before that, they started to slowly burn out while recording and finishing this album, doing the subsequent shows in support for it. And then Combat Rock was also intended to be a double album originally before that whole idea was scrapped. So it just boggles the mind. Like, it's just a double album, then a triple album, then you were going to follow up on another double album. Maybe it would have been a little bit of overkill. in hindsight, if you think about it now, it might have been a bit of overkill. What do you think about that?
Overkill.
Overkill.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's kind of pushing it too far. It's not like they had the audience like a Frank Zappa or something like that. I feel like, and that was another guy that battled with the labels constantly over
Yeah.
how many records can I put out at once. I mean, the infamous Leather 8-sided album that they still wouldn't put out. And so yeah, I think a lot of that was going on at the time. There was a lot of bands fighting their labels at this time, so I think that was just a quick shutdown.
Was this
Like,
around the time that Tom Petty was fighting for his record to
I
be
was
priced?
yeah, I was gonna
Hard
say that. That
Promises?
was about 81. That was about 81, I think, was Hard Promises.
Hard
So yeah, that makes total sense. So yeah, it was just kind of in the air. So yeah, and I think nobody would say at this point that Combat Rock should have been a double album. I think and honestly, I'm not. I like half of Combat Rock pretty well. Some of the other stuff on there is like, yeah. So I don't know if I would have even enjoyed a double on that. It just depends on where the rest of it would have gone.
Yeah.
Half of it's really strong. It's one of, it's weird because, of those initial 5 records, that's the one I put at the bottom. Not that it's really that bad.
Yeah.
It's just the 5th best album they did.
No, I totally agree. I like Combat Rock, but yeah, if you have to pick the weakest album of, those initial 5 before everything, fell apart, and
Yeah.
they had to fire Topper, and I just think the drumming changes really affected this band more than most bands because Topper was the drummer for the Clash. Let that be
Yeah.
known. From one drummer to another, Topper Hedden, that was the drummer, the definitive drummer for the Clash. Nobody was ever going to take that guy's place and do it better.
And isn't that interesting that he is the Clash drummer? And then when he joined Hanoi Rocks to help fill in when Razzle got killed, the band just couldn't make it work. They couldn't lock in with him,
That
and
is really interesting.
that caused them to break up. It's just like they
What a
couldn't
shame.
make that work with him, and he's got all the talent in the world and could write songs here and there. It's just it was meant to be that
Yeah.
he was the drummer for that band, and I totally yeah, it's usually drummers are so replaceable. Sorry, but there's few bands that could say that. I mean, like some of the best bands of all time did replace their drummers and they did fine. Sabbath is a good example of that. AC/DC is a great example of that. I mean, yeah, so
Yeah,
you know
Terry Chimes was one of their original drummers, and when they brought in Terry Chimes to replace Topper Headed, just listen to live at Shea Stadium. Listen to that record, or listen to the stuff on From Here to Eternity.
yeah,
Terry Chimes playing Rock the Casbah. It's got like no vibe, and Topper wrote that song, so
yeah,
that factor too. But it's just that vibe that he had on the drums is just irreplaceable.
yeah.
So why don't we get into discussing the track sequence, and then we'll come back really quick and then play the record, and then we'll close out the show.
All right.
So we're back after talking about the tracks that I've chosen to play from the record, and we've discussed a running sequence order. And just wanted to mention too, we were talking about the cover songs that are on this record, and one of the tracks that we've chosen, Police on My Back, is that not one of those cover songs that was written by Eddie Grant years and years before Electric Avenue, or a group that he was in at the time?
Yeah,
Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I believe so, actually.
So here's the tracks that I've chosen to play from my 3 LP 180 gram edition, and I've discussed with Joey track sequence, and it's going to go like this. So side A is going to begin with the Magnificent 7, followed by Hitsville UK, followed by Junko Partner, followed by Ivan Meets G.I. Joe, followed by The Leader, and ending side A with The Crooked Beat. And side
and
B,
and the runout groove is a loop of you peeing on side 3.
oh
I just did that for this. I just wanted to appeal to the side 3 fans, so just villainizing you.
I got nothing to say there. I can only just laugh. And then side B is going to begin with Police on My Back, followed by One More Time, and then Somebody Got Murdered, followed by Charlie Don't Surf, followed by The Call Up, and ending the album with Washington Bullets. So, Joey, if you want to explain some of the rationale behind these decisions, the floor is yours.
Well, my Gene Simmons style executive producing pretty much only dictated that, of course, you got to go with the original opener, but I insisted that side 2 open up with Police on My Back, which we had to finagle some stuff around to get that to happen. And I said, Charlie Don't Surf is fine, but it's not a closer. So it was down to either The Call Up or Washington Bullets. Either one of those, I think, would. It's a good 1-2 punch anyway, I think, to end the record off. So Washington Bullets, to me, it's like a cool down, but I do like it as an outro. So I would think that's a cool way to go. So if you just had to make it one album that would fit on an album of that time, 50 minutes, I think this is pretty good. I mean, some people will nitpick it, but that's your own opinion, and that's cool too. If you have your own version of the one album version, put it in the comments. We're not gonna fight. We just we like all opinions, but that's our opinion. I think it's a cool record. That's kids today, they like making the playlists. I'm no different, honestly. I just wanted to say it that way, but make that, and you can listen to the audio version of this episode, and you'll hear it in this order. I think it's really cool.
All right, so let's get to it right now. Here is the official I Am Vinyl podcast version, the single LP of The Clash, Sandinista.
Sandinista.
All right, we are back, and that was our version of The Clash's Sandinista as a single LP version, as chosen by myself and Joey. And so we hope you enjoyed listening to that. And also, I noted this book earlier, A Ride of Our Own. I definitely recommend that if you want a good story about The Clash from the perspective of one of their roadies, definitely get this book. Definitely goes into a lot about Sandinista, as well as pretty much all the albums. And I just also wanted to note this book.
Oh, yeah, I've got that. Yeah, that's a good one.
This is really good. This has a lot of the same stories that are in A Ride of Our Own, but just, much more expanded and tons of pictures and
sure.
just great. So if any of these books are still available and you can find them and you want more information about The Clash and these albums, definitely check them out. So it's just something I wanted to know.
And if you like your picture, and if you like your pictures to move, then check out From Here to Eternity, the Clash documentary.
Oh yeah,
good footage in there.
Yeah, 100% agree. So why don't we get to the outro and give some love to our other shows here at cnjradio.com. So Joey, if you don't mind, take it away.
My show, Rock Strikes 10 songs, no more, no less, always a different theme. And even if I do one of those crazy countdown shows, it's always 10 songs per episode. Get you in and out of there in about an hour or so. And there is the Synaptic Empire audio transmissions featuring Randy Brown, a true alternative. Of course, the flagship of CNJ Radio is the Wrestling House Show, the longest running show on CNJ, a pro wrestling podcast unlike any other. Talk about new stuff, old stuff, Last Theater with Chris, and there's a lot of good franchise reviews on there of different horror movie franchises. Real deep dives, so check that out. Talking Rock with myself and Mark Striegel from Talking Metal, where it's kind of an offshoot of both Rock Strikes 10 and Talking Metal. We just recorded an episode today, actually. This is my second Zoom of the day. So we talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I do a little rant on one of my favorite artists, on something that I didn't dig that they did recently. There's a little teaser for you. And of course, the guy right here on the other end, I Am Vinyl with the great Pete LaRussa. And I feel like I should be hearing the KRP outro, but, listen to I Am Vinyl. You're watching it now, but go listen to it also, because bonus music, yes. That way we don't get kicked off of YouTube.
Good point. Well, Joey, thank you once again for joining me here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode, and we will see you next time right here at cnjradio.com. And Joey, I'll be calling you back in an hour. Back!
Get it?
I'm back!